Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today we're going to talk about Dungeons and Dragons VE. That's the current edition with the 2024 core rule books. Uh, Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition has gone into Dungeons and Dragons V edition, right? So Roman numeral 5. It's not incremental, it's not 5.5, it's not 6.0. It is a new edition, but it's a non-incremental edition. First time that's ever happened in the history of all tabletop role-playing games. And we're going to talk about Modiphius 2D20 Star Trek Adventures. And we're going to talk about agency and the difference in a traditional Dungeons and Dragons campaign and then the difference of playing in a Star Trek Adventures campaign. All right, so let's jump into this. So I've been learning quite a bit about these systems. And what really shocks me is, so first of all, Modiphius, it owns the 2D20 system, and it set the 2D20 system into place. That is its rule system, okay? And it is really configured to bring Star Trek to life, and it really does the setting is married to the mechanics, and it's done extremely well. It is very complicated and it's very difficult to learn, but once you learn it, you can tell Star Trek stories seamlessly with this system, right? But what really shocked me is, so I have a player character. We're running we have a dungeon master and a dragon master, just one, right? And that has allowed us to learn the system quickly, right? More quickly than we would have with like 4 or 5 players, which is very nice. However, what's really shocked me is constantly, absolutely constantly, in this campaign, Security Lieutenant Archibald is the player character, right? And what is really shocking me is there are a ton of roles where he is about to die. There are I wouldn't say a ton, but it's increasing, right? There are a ton of roles where he is about to die and he may not even have a role involved. This is really astounding. And I didn't really understand this but the structure of Star Trek puts player characters in danger in ways that Dungeons & Dragons doesn't. So we take this for granted in Dungeons & Dragons, but you almost always have agency, right? In Dungeons & Dragons, you are going in with a group of adventurers, and every single one of those adventurers has the ability to be hit and to hit. Even clerics have the ability to lay down serious damage, right? Wizards can't take hits that often, and it's very difficult for them, and they really should be behind the fighter, right? But they can't. But they're given a lot of ways to avoid damage, not to take damage, but to avoid damage, right? Mage armor and a whole bunch of literally walls, of walls of force, right? Teleportation to get out of the way. But you go into every adventure in Dungeons & Dragons with a capable adventurer, and then you are expected to keep yourself alive and bring the thunder against the obstacle. That is completely different in Star Trek Adventures. And so recently we had this situation where Security Lieutenant Archibald was going into a ion storm in a shuttlecraft, right? And Mayweather was the pilot, and we got down to it, and we're like, okay, I was like, so Security Lieutenant Archibald was in command. And so we had this situation where we very carefully, I very carefully explained the role. I was like, okay, listen, you need to get 4 successes or you will die, right? Like, you need to get 4 successes or you will die on this roll. And you only have, Mayweather has he has 2 D20s, and you're going to give him an advantage, which will give him an additional D20, right? And so he'll have 3 D20s, and he needs to get four success rolls. 4 success rolls. And you're going to assist him, which means you're going to roll 1 D20, right? So the reality is you have to get a success on every single D20. And this one was you have to roll under a 13, right? or you get 2 successes if you roll under a 4, right? So each d20 has the possibility of producing two successes. So with Mayweather's 3 d20, he could get 6 successes, but he could also roll 20, 19, and 18 and get 0 successes, right? Now, if he gets 3 successes with his 3d20, then it goes to the assistance roll, right? And the assistance roll would be made, and if the assistance roll is successful, then you have the 40-20. But if these 4 successes are not made, if the 4 successes are not accomplished with these 40-20, 3d20 on the non-player character, right? With me as the dungeon master rolling those successes, right? If he doesn't get 3, right, then if he only gets 2 successes and you need 4, and you're going to roll 1 assistance die, we won't even make your roll because you will get 3 successes, and then you'll have failed to get 4 successes. And then what's going to happen is the shuttlecraft is going to be torn apart by the ion storm. The ion storm is so powerful, this would be like a sledgehammer hitting a fly full on. You will die, right? So now you, as the security lieutenant Archibald, the player character, you need to decide, are you willing to take this risk? And I want you to understand, I'm going to roll these 3 dice. If I only come up with 2 successes, you die, and this campaign ends, period. No damage rolls, nothing. It's just you die, right? And the reason why is the ion storm is just too powerful, right? And also your 1 assistance will not help, right? So I want you to understand the stakes of this roll, right? And so we structured this, right? And this happens all the time, where there are rolls being made to determine the life status of a player character. This is I don't know if I've ever seen this in Dungeons & Dragons. This happens once every 2 or 3 sessions in this game. Huge, important rolls are happening because these characters are part of Starfleet, right? And because their skills are siloed, right? Not everybody can do everything, right? Whereas every Dungeons and Dragons adventure is an adventure, where these guys are very limited, skilled professionals in one distinct discipline, right? Excuse me. Really fascinating. I've never seen anything like this, and it is harrowing. It is harrowing, right? Because basically in Dungeons and Dragons, you die because you failed. In Star Trek Adventures, you can die because the dungeon master failed to make her rolls. That is completely unprecedented. Completely unprecedented. And so Star Trek Adventures is really a phenomenal campaign system, but this is shockingly different than Dungeons and Dragons, and there's absolutely no analog to this in Dungeons and Dragons. The other thing that's really blowing my mind is Dungeons and Dragons suffers from a lack of narrative stability, because it doesn't have hundreds of episodes that show how a season should be shaped and how an episode should be shaped, right? And once you've seen this, once you've actually played Star Trek Adventures, you get a very clear perspective of this. Star Trek Adventures is excellent. I highly recommend trying it, but you also really need to get your and actually there's no way for you to prepare your players. They will see this and they will be shocked, right? And the only reason I'm putting this here is so that you're not surprised when this happens, right? The other thing is, I think Dungeons and Dragons can be like this if you make any faction significantly important, right? So the Harpers, the Brotherhood, Order of the Gauntlet, Lord's Alliance, Sigil has a whole bunch of factions. But if you create a faction that's as strong as Starfleet is in the Star Trek campaign, then Dungeons and Dragons can function like this, but it's extremely rare, right? And you would have to craft it. You would have to craft it. And right now, I don't think anybody's doing that in Dungeons and Dragons. So just a really shocking difference that I found. And it truly is shocking in my humble opinion. Every single word you just heard is my humble opinion. Nothing more, nothing less. The important part is when I get to hear your humble opinion when you get in the comments and send your traffic. Please consider liking and subscribing, and have a fetch millennium.